everybody, and welcome to another edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morgan-Roth, and glad to have you with us. Hope you had a safe July 4th. I know the COVID numbers aren't doing anything to make anybody feel good. There aren't many games, unless you're watching the Korea Baseball Organization, but we have a special broadcast tonight. And as usual, I have my co-host, Rick Curti. Welcome back, Rick.
Thanks. I'm excited about the show.
And we want to introduce Mark Biquez, the Ballpark Hunter, whom I had the opportunity to meet on Twitter. And Mark, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you for having me on here. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, for a lot of you folks out there that like to look at ballparks, we have a special broadcast tonight. It's called Take Me Out to the Ballparks. And there's no better person to have on this broadcast than a guy like Mark Biquez. And Mark, why don't you let everybody know a little bit about you and how many ballparks you've hit, and then we're going to start talking about some good old nostalgia.
Okay, well, my name is Mark Biquez. I'm from New Jersey. I'm a Mets fan, and I also pull for the White Sox in the American League. I have been to 270 ballparks. That includes major, current and past, collegiate, minor league, independent, and amateur ballparks. So I count them all, and it's up to 270. I write for Stadium Journey, which is a website. You can find us at stadiumjourney.com, where I have been writing a lot about baseball this season. And even though there's no baseball going on, there are a lot of different leagues that are forming this year. And I also have a YouTube page, which is Ballpark Hunter on YouTube, where you can watch me, review ballparks that I've been to the last several years, 5-minute videos, just to kind of highlight where I've been and, just kind of keep a legacy of places I've been to the last few years.
Yeah, I can only imagine how much you've built that YouTube channel for sure, knowing you've been to so many ballparks.
Yeah, that's the thing. I have a bunch of new equipment. I was getting ready to test it out this year. It was really to kind of, make these videos a little more special. And I'm sitting home. Just waiting for clearance, because there's some ballparks in Michigan and Kentucky that will be housing baseball this year. But I just have to wait, and it's the waiting game.
All right. Well, Mark, since we like to use the old term in baseball, leading off, why don't you go ahead and give me some of your favorite ballparks? I don't know. You want to give me 25 or 30 of them? You list them off, and then we'll even have you throw in there maybe like a dozen that you don't like. And then we'll just compare the list a little bit. How's that sound? All right?
Okay. Wow, 25 to 30.
Yeah, I know this is going to be pretty tough for you since you got 9 million of them, but...
Yeah, the one ballpark that I have really enjoyed, and I've been there 2 times in the past 4 years, is Target Field in Minneapolis. It is just such an amazing ballpark, beautiful views of the city, great places to hang out and eat. They have this Town Ball Tavern, which is a bar, sit-down restaurant that honors the small town ball ballparks of Minnesota. That's a whole nother experience all to itself. So Target Field is really, both times I've been there, has just been such an amazing place to see a game. I love PNC out in Pittsburgh. I love Oracle in San Francisco. 2 small ballparks in a great neighborhood with beautiful views. And when the teams are winning, the atmosphere is even better. I like Wrigley, who, if you're not a baseball fan, I'm not a Cubs fan. I hate them, but Wrigley Field is one of a kind, even if you compare it to Fenway. It's just, it's how baseball used to be, snap bang the neighborhood. You got the ivy, you got the brick walls. Even if the Cubs are losing, the fans are still out there. Day games are still popular. So that's a fun place. I also like White Sox Park, Guaranteed Rate Field. Not the nicest stadium, but you can eat well. You can not break the bank when you go to a game there. It's also a fun place for the kids. They have a little kids zone. That's probably the best in Major League Baseball. I'm trying to think. Petco Park is a place I haven't been to in quite some time, but I would love to go back. I think the problem I have is when you go to some ballparks on the West Coast, you don't get back there right away. Maybe another 15 to 20 years. So a lot has changed. Same with Coors. I loved Coors when I went there, and I would love to get back to Denver to see a game, to see what has changed, because when I was there in 2009, I wasn't taking all these pictures and videos and having all this documentation like I do now. So, getting into minor league baseball, and these are affiliates and independent, CHS Field in St. Paul, Minnesota is my favorite. The place is always packed. The tickets start around $5-6. They have characters that they hire that dress up and entertain fans throughout the game. They have a great green concept where everybody recycles. They collect rainwater. It's in this part of town where you can get there by car or mass transit. It is, the St. Paul Saints do such a marvelous job that if they can bottle their success and they can sell it to another independent baseball team, they would make millions of dollars. That's how amazing it is. Reading, I think it's called First Star Stadium now in Pennsylvania, is a combination of the old school and the new school. If you walk around underneath the grandstand, you see a collection of murals and pictures and photographs of the stadium's history. And, you talk about some of the great players who have played in minor league baseball. Reading has a whole list of them. And it's just a fun place to be. I love it. I've been there a couple times, and each time I go there, it's like, man, this is what minor league baseball is all about. Brooklyn, MCU Park in New York City is full of lights, color, great food, great sounds, great excitement. Fans pack that place quite a bit. There's another ballpark. It's an amateur ballpark. It is in Lineport, Pennsylvania. It's called Lineport Stadium. It was built in 1933. There was a dairyman. He loved baseball so much that he decided to build a 1,000-seat replica of Scheid Park, and it's still standing. It has not changed that dramatically in over 80 years. It's old wooden seats. You have a covered grandstand. You have this giant hill in the outfield with some not pine trees, some trees out there as a batter's eye. You're back in time when you go to a game there, and it's like $3 to see a game, and you're watching amateur baseball. So guys my age and younger, or even a little bit older, are playing baseball after work. Just living the dream and having a couple beers after the game. Victory Field, where I live in Indianapolis, one of the best lawn seat area in professional baseball. It's the perfect place to go to hang out and be with friends and entertain the kids. They do a great job. I love what they do. Fireworks every Friday, giveaways every Sunday. I don't know anybody who doesn't want to go to an Indians game. Nashville, Tennessee also has a great new ballpark. They have a place called the Bandbox in right field. It's an open bar. There are people that will buy a $9 ticket and just hang out there all day. They don't want to go to the game. They'll go to the bar. They'll play shuffleboard. They'll play cornhole. They'll listen to live music, and they're there to just mingle on a summer night. And you've got that awesome, iconic guitar-shaped scoreboard right next to you, which makes it even a better time. Birmingham, Regents Field. Love Regents Field. I love the fact that they took a modern ballpark and they kind of made it a hit place to go in downtown Birmingham, which they were playing out in Hoover Met for so many years, so they're able to bring fans back there. And speaking of Birmingham, you got Rickwood Field, which was built in 1910, and it's considered the oldest ballpark in the world. And every year they have the Rickwood Classic, and luckily I was there 2 years ago. And it was one of the greatest baseball events I've been to. It's truly a step back in time there. And if you can get a chance to see this one-of-a-kind ball game, it's held every mid-May, I would suggest you do that. I don't know, I don't know what people want to do for baseball travels, but that is actually on everybody's bucket list. That is one place you need to go to because it is just such a unique experience. And they didn't have it this year. So, fortunately enough, I was able to go there. Another place that I went to last year by luck was the College World Series in Omaha. I wasn't planning on going, but I decided to go, and, I had an amazing time. It's a 23,000-seat stadium, great food. It's in the middle of downtown Omaha, and, this year it was canceled, so I was able to take part of that. Omaha has Warner Park. That's their minor league ballpark. It's kind of out in the countryside, but it's a beautiful ballpark too. They have little touches there that you don't see at other facilities. So, there's. I know you wanted 25 ballparks, but I'm at the point now where we're going to have some discussion to see if you agree with me or not on some of these places I picked.
Oh, that's all right. Well, hey, listen, all right, Rick, go ahead.
Yeah.
Man, it sounds amazing. I mean, that's fantastic. What is like your least favorite ballpark you've been to in Major League Baseball, and why was it your least favorite?
Well, I mean, I remember the Metrodome being god awfully boring. It was a snooze fest. That was 25 years ago, and it's amazing to think what ballparks were like back then. But I would say currently one of my least favorite ballparks that I have been to, and I hate to say this because a lot of people love this ballpark, Miller Park in Milwaukee. I'm just not a huge fan of Miller Park. I love a lot about it. I love the tailgating. I love the brats. I love the fact that, if you're there with your son, you can bring a baseball glove and play catch, or you can do it with your friend. It's like one of the best places for tailgating. I'm not that impressed with the ballpark. It was okay. Same with
we're going to have a discussion on that one in a minute here. Let me tell you, but go ahead.
Yeah, you just round someone up.
Okay, yeah. And here's the thing. It's like I've been to Miller Park a few times. Chase Field, it's been 15, 14 years. So maybe if I go back, it's a different experience. Maybe I picked a bad day to go. But those are probably not my favorites. I can see Oakland, I can see Tampa Bay.
Yes.
But here's the thing with Tampa Bay. When I went to the game, it was pouring rain. It was a monsoon outside. So if it wasn't a dome stadium, I would not have been able to see a baseball game that night. So I did it. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Let's just put it that way. Oakland. Oakland was just, you knew what you were getting yourself into. You knew it was a dump. You're wondering why this is still standing as a major league ballpark, because by all conventions, every stadium like it that was built during that era of multi-purpose stadiums are gone.
Right.
I think Sky Dome is technically a multi-purpose stadium that's still standing, but Oakland, with all the problems they've had, and the neighborhood's a little dodgy at times, and I went there after a beer fest. They were trying to get fans in there for a beer fest. They said, okay, we'll have a beer fest, and your ticket also includes a free game. And I show up there, and you walk over this bridge over the freeway, and you're walking by a bunch of panhandlers. So you pass the panhandlers, you get out to the stadium, and there's a bunch of young people just passed out on the grass. And I'm like, what am I getting myself into? And then you start smelling the smell of marijuana. It's just an odd setup to go into a baseball game.
Okay. Now, let me give you a little bit of a history lesson here in the family, okay, about Miller Park. I'm going to go ahead and ramble some of my favorite ones here. But, I have a young lady who does all the production here, and she's going to make sure that you sound as low as possible because she didn't hear it right, okay, called Miller Park. Now, a historic event in the family occurred there on January 1st, 2017, that I got married in that ballpark over at Fridays. And let me tell you, okay, that pretzels and cheese were really good. And
the food's great. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
But, I never thought in my wildest of imaginations that I'd ever get married in a ballpark, much less that one. But majority rules when the family sitting in the beer town. So no, I got to tell you, me personally, I like Miller Park because number one, I went to the old county stadium, and I'll get to that shortly. That was horrible.
That was a great place.
You call it great? I don't call it great. Then again, it depends if you're a fan or you're a member of the media, but that'll be for another discussion. But I will say one thing about Miller Park. They had that little Little League Park right behind it. So, you have a little bit of the new versus a little bit of the kids versus the adults, as they call them. But that's just giving you a little history lesson here about the family here. And my dad, though, I got to tell you, he got spooked. He thought we were going to get married in the ballpark in dead winter, but he didn't realize that, Dad, these modern ballparks aren't that bad. They do have those things called roofs, okay? So it wasn't that bad. Then again, the guy's living in Florida. What would you expect anyway? But just thought I'd throw that out to you. I'm going to go over some of my favorites, and then some of my ones I don't particularly like, and then we'll go from there. Number one in my eyes, of course, it should be duly noted, and I'm a bit partial toward this one, is that place called Tiger Stadium. Okay, maybe not one of the greater areas, although it wasn't bad. I've certainly seen a lot worse. Of course, you get to Yankee Stadium. I was there the year that was closing. Dodger Stadium, I went there in 1980 for the Olympics, and the Koreans played the United States when baseball was a demonstration sport at that time. Marlins Park's a beautiful park. Only problem is it's in a bad neighborhood, okay? But I saw the All-Star game there and many games there as well. Miller Park, I just talked about, always have a special place in my heart. And I actually like the place. I really do. But again, you got to remember, though, Mark, you're looking at it from a fan standpoint, and me being a member of the media, the amenities are a little different and the access is a little bit different. Now, I'll go on to some minor league parks. One Rick Curti should be all too familiar with is the one up in Asheville where the Asheville tourists are. You talk about beautiful mountain scenery. Oh, my goodness.
Asheville's beautiful.
It is.
It's a throwback. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Another one that unfortunately got recently torn down, but I loved it. A lot of great memories there. It's called Fort Lauderdale Stadium. I covered the Yankees during spring training there, and I also had the opportunity to cover the Fort Lauderdale Yankees. Met a lot of future major leaguers, made a lot of good friends there. Al Lopez Field out in Tampa, which was adjacent to Tampa Stadium, where the Reds played, the Tarpons. Loved going there. It was really neat. No traffic, by the way. What do you expect? Lots of great memories. Wrigley Field, I did make it to, I think once or twice. It was a really neat place. I was covering the Cubbies over there. And I did go to the old Comiskey Park. And one of the things that stood out about Comiskey Park was I debated whether I should take a jacket in there. I just happened to have a sweat jacket. Thank God I did, because I didn't realize how windy that place was, and that jacket came to good use. Now, here in Florida, JetBlue Park, Mini Fenway, is a dynamo. Oh, my goodness, is it great. I've never made it to Fenway Park. That is a bucket list move for me. But if you go to JetBlue Park out in Fort Myers, I'll tell you what, it does have a Fenway feel to it. George Steinbrenner Field out in Tampa, across from the new Buccaneers place, is a beautiful place. We were there, I think, 2 years ago. Tempe Diablo Stadium, where the Angels train, is great. I love that mountain scenery out in Tempe. Of course, Comerica Park is a dynamite place, too. All the new parks are trying to outdo the other ones. Sloan Park out in Arizona, where the Cubbies, the new Wrigley, so to speak, how they redid it. I think it was 15, 20,000 people there. Then you have Riverfront Stadium. I enjoyed going there, seeing the scenery was great. Obviously not a great ballpark, but then you had the old artificial surface in a cookie cutter environment. Three Rivers Stadium, saw some Lions games there, didn't see the Pirates, but yet you could still get a feel for the multi-purpose part of it. I enjoyed Chase Field out in Phoenix. It was really a neat place. Saw the Tigers play the Diamondbacks for 3 games, and that was the year, ironically, when I was living in Arizona, the Diamondbacks would go on to win the World Series in 2001. I like the Sky Dome out in Toronto. Beautiful place. I think they have a hotel in it. Great place, and yes, a multi-purpose stadium. Joker Marchant Stadium, one of the classic ballparks. They've done a good remodel job on that one. Fort Mill, South Carolina, I know it may not be the best of areas, but that 10,000-seat stadium, if it were anywhere else, would be better than where it was at Fort Mill. But I actually covered a game there on the 4th of July. I enjoyed it. Candlestick Park out in San Francisco, saw some Lions games there. Once again, you fall in the course of a multi-purpose one. The Kingdom in Seattle, saw the Seahawks game there, but at least you never knew about rainouts out in Seattle. And the Oakland Coliseum, you're right, is certainly not a neighborhood you really care too much about for sure. So, now, a couple of the newer ones here in South Florida. Ballpark of the Palm Beaches is great, where the Nationals and the Astros play. Roger Dean Stadium is right where you'd want to put a lot of, you have a good downtown area, lots of residential there. And Compadre Stadium was another favorite of mine out in Chandler. Of course, they tore it down. It's all been developed. And I used to love Vero Beach, Dodger Town out, and that was a great place, too. So that's 28 for now. I'll give you a little something to bite on. I'll give you some of my hated ones, and we'll open this discussion. I didn't care for County Stadium. Tough place to go. Crockett Field, Rick, you know that place that burned down. What do you expect?
Yeah.
Sims Legion Park. The only thing good about it was I worked for the Rangers, and we had Sammy Sosa, Juan Gonzalez, and the better part of 12 major leaguers for a 90-loss team. Miami Stadium, oh my goodness. You ever been there?
I've heard of that. I've heard of the stories.
Yeah, okay, good. The stories are right. Okay, if you say anything bad there, then you know what? You won't go 6 feet under. You'll go 66 feet under out in that area. In fact, the Miami Arena, where the Heat used to play, was right down the road from there. And I had an opportunity to cover a Heat game. And I'll tell you what, instead of getting free parking, I paid $10 just to get close to the stadium and didn't even waste my time. You're right, the Metrodome is definitely nothing to write home about. Where the Marlins played when they were the Florida Marlins, the Joe Robbie Stadium wasn't very good at all. Now, I haven't talked about many college stadiums, and I won't talk about this one. FAU Stadium is one of the worst college ballparks I've ever seen. And if there's ever a university that deserves a brand new one, the Owls do. They've had a great coaches under Kevin Cooney and John McCormack there, and that tradition there is unbelievable. They deserve a lot better. Chain of the Lakes Park out in Winter Haven is horrible. They're known for their mosquitoes. Rick Curti mentioned this earlier on pre-production. Cleveland Stadium, I saw a near no-hitter by Dave Steve. The only thing that stopped that from happening was a pebble with a bad hop in the right field. Exhibition Stadium out in Toronto was nothing to write home about. The Padres played a long time ago out in Yuma, Arizona, and Pompano Beach Municipal Stadium was horrible, but I had some great memories there. So that gives you a lot to play with. All right, so Mark, why don't you give me your take on some of this ballparks on this list?
Oh, the ones you just said? Wow, these are places I've heard about. I've never been to Exhibition Stadium in Toronto, but I remember watching games and thinking, that's an odd-looking ballpark. But I remember going to the Sky Dome in 1989 when they first opened. That was considered the ballpark of the future. I mean, they had a retractable roof as had never been heard of before. And the concession stands, I think, were all McDonald's. I mean, it was like, oh, my goodness, we can get McDonald's at the ballpark and not just some wrapped-up boiled hot dog. So, I mean, the food options were a little bit better back then. And, you know, you mentioned some of these Florida ballparks. Miami Stadium, I remember 1991, I was there with my mom and dad. And Miami, and I don't know what Miami is now, they had a reputation of being a very dangerous city. You didn't want to be in the wrong neighborhood in the middle of the night. And I don't think my mom didn't want my dad to take me to the ballpark because somebody said, oh, yeah, you don't want to go to that part of town. That's a bad part of town. You don't want to go there. And my mom's like, I don't think you should take Mark there. You know, God forbid something happens. And so, yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get to see a game down there in Miami. So.
I went there for spring training. Another place I didn't mention, Houston Astrodome. I saw the Lions take on the Oilers there. That was not bad. Now, we drove by the old Nashville baseball stadium.
RFK.
What's that?
RFK.
Well, actually, I'm talking about Tennessee Stadium, but actually, I've been to RFK Stadium, too, to see the Lions there, and that was a multi-purpose park, too. I think they'll be tearing that down. The one I'm talking to is the old Nashville one. They moved to downtown.
Oh, Greer. Yeah,
Greer.
Yep.
They had that guitar there. Now, obviously, it's demolished, but we drove by there when it was going down.
Oh, yeah. And I had a lot of memories from there because I was there 25, 26 years ago, and they had a double-A team playing there. And I thought I was watching the Sounds, but I was watching the Nashville Express.
Well, actually, a guy by the name of Larry Schmittou, they were the Sounds, and they were an affiliate of the New York Yankees. So,
yeah, and I went there a few years later with my cousin, and she grew up in Houston, so this was one of her first baseball games. One of the few times she watched baseball outdoors, so she's like, oh, this is great because, you know, where I live, baseball's indoors my whole life. Another time I went to Nashville at Greer Stadium, and this wasn't that long ago. This was one of their last years at the stadium. I had called up that said, hey, I'm on my way to Birmingham. I want to stop in and pick up one of your retro jerseys. By the time I arrived at the stadium, the person who worked the gift shop was on lunch. And they had nobody in the stadium that can operate the cash register. So they told me to come back. And I said, I'm on my way to Birmingham. I'm coming from Indianapolis. And they said, well, we can call. I said, I don't want you to get her back from break, but nobody else can open up the store. I want to buy a $60 jersey in the window. So finally, they told me to just hang out. So they just let me hang out in the ballpark. And I'm just walking around the ballpark and, just taking pictures. And I had a recorder, so I was recording myself talking. And it was just an odd experience. And I'm thinking to myself, nobody cares if you're just walking around this ballpark and you're just hanging out. So finally, the lady came back, I think maybe 40 minutes later, and she gave me a 10% discount off the jersey. So,
hey Mark, have you ever been at Cashman Field in Las Vegas?
Yes,
at the dump.
Yeah, Cashman Field was way off the strip in no man's land. And
yeah, awful area.
You went to see a game there at 7 o'clock at night, and it was 100 degrees. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it wasn't a nice stadium. I would love to go to the new ballpark. I just hear so many great things about it. They actually have mesh seating. All the seats are mesh.
Nice.
That bring the temperature down significantly when you sit down in them, because when you sat down in those plastic seats in the hot desert heat, it's probably somewhat uncomfortable.
I went to a game when they were the Area 51s, and I went, and it was like in a god-awful area.
Yeah.
And it was like hot, and and I lived in Las Vegas for 5 years, and I haven't gone to the new one, but I know it's in Summerlin, which is a great area. It's like
Rick, that's where
Las Vegas,
Rick, that's where Mark Wilson lives. Remember, he lives in Summerlin. Remember? Mark, yeah, he lives in Summerlin. Yeah, we had him on.
It's a great stadium,
right? So go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, those are the worst. I'd tell you that my worst experiences is when I go to some of those desert ballparks, like Bakersfield, Sam Lynn Stadium. First of all, that stadium should not even be considered a stadium. It's small. It's not even configured. It's just an oddball stadium, and you're not shocked why they pulled out the minor league club there. Now, I think Bakersfield is a great town that probably could be a AAA affiliate if somebody decided to build a new ballpark there. But this stadium was just falling apart. You can tell the team was like, well, we're going to be contracted or moving, so we're not going to put any money into it. And here you are just roasting your butt off watching a game. Same with High Desert, which was even worse because I think the grass was brown when you went to watch a game there. It's just those are the most uncomfortable experiences when you're burning up at the game. I've been to some games also down in the Appalachian League. I was in Kingsport, and I was watching a Met game. It was 90 degrees. I was burning up. I was so uncomfortable. I left the game early. I hopped in my car. I drove an hour up the interstate to Bristol, and I go to this funky ballpark that, once again, should not be considered a ballpark, but the temperature cooled down, and there was just a packed house at the stadium. There was this giant grass area down the third base side where people brought their lawn chairs out, and it should not have worked, but I had an amazing time because it was just such an odd experience watching a game in the middle of a residential area with a concession stand that was no bigger than what you would see at a Little League field. The weather had cooled down. I think that's what I like. I like the fact that the weather had cooled down, and I love the fact that there was people there. Like, if I go to a ballpark and you have people in the ballpark, like, that really makes up a lot. You know, if you go to a ballpark and it's empty, like in Lancaster, California a few years ago, and it's burning up, you don't want to be there. It just takes a lot out of you. It's like, man, this is terrible. There's no life here. So I've been surprised. I've been surprised by some really ugly-looking ballparks. If they can get that Charlie Brown Christmas tree feel to it. Yeah, it could be a nice place.
Yeah, it's funny. I was out in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and we drove by that ballpark out there. Never saw a game there. We were just checking out some property out in Kenosha, and we had an opportunity to just ride by the ballpark. That seemed like a pretty nice, quaint place, that's for sure. So, and then I'll tell you one of the worst ones, now that you bring it up, is Walt Riddle Field out in Fayetteville. Oh, that was horrible, wasn't it?
I've never been there, but yeah, I can imagine.
Long time ago. I mean, back then in 1987, when I was out there, was a brand new park where the Fayette Generals were there, and they were the affiliate of the Detroit Tigers. So
yeah, that's interesting about Simmons Field. They just announced they're going to have a 2-team league there, and they're going to feature the Kingfish and the K-Town Bobbers. And I did a video there a few years ago, and that was once again a very basic, rudimentary ballpark. But they added these carnival-like touches there that have really blossomed, and people are packed. They have great concession items. They have a gift shop that has very inexpensive jerseys. I think the jerseys were $40. They're not the greatest quality jersey like you would buy Major League, but I mean, heck, for $40 you'd buy one. So I love when people take a small ballpark and they spruce it up, because when they do that, I think those are some of my favorites. When you take a dying ballpark and you just build it up, sort of like in Madison, Wisconsin, the same concept there as well.
Yeah, you ever been to Jackie Robinson Field out in Daytona?
Yes, I've been there. I was there for a game, I believe, that pretty much got rained out. We were there, but I don't think we ever got a chance to play. But yeah, it was a nice ballpark. Yeah,
we actually saw a game there. The Lions were playing the Jaguars, but we saw like 4.5 innings, and it did get rained out. But what was good about it is we went there before, so we had a chance to walk the grounds a little and all the historical things to Jackie Robinson. I think that was neat. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be Daytona will be contracted. Now, last week on the Sports Exchange, we had a guy by the name of Clint Studer. I don't know if you've ever heard the name, but
never. No.
Well, he's actually the owner of the Pensacola Blue Wahoos out in Pensacola, Florida.
Okay, I heard of them.
Right. I hear he's got a ballpark of like 4,000 people or so. Really nice, quaint place. I'll have to get out there sometime. And also, the Beloit Snappers are in the process of building a new stadium.
Yes,
that'll be actually opening in 21, I believe. So,
you know what? I should have added Beloit, because that was Pullman Field. That was a terrible stadium too. It's one of those erector sets they built in the mid '80s. I would love to go back in time in the mid '80s, late '80s, and look at the ballparks they were building and thinking, really, guys, you think people want to watch baseball here? And it just seemed like within 5-10 years, the whole concept of a ballpark changed. So Beloit, thankfully, I think they were on the chopping block. I think it was either them or Quad Cities. And because Beloit is getting the new ballpark, I think they'll be saved. And
Fayetteville's got a new stadium. Fayetteville's got a new stadium now too, and they have a team called the Woodpeckers, and it's part of the Astros organization. So I haven't got a chance to go out there, but I heard a lot of nice things about it. It looks beautiful. And then Alabama's got a new stadium. They have a team called the Trash Pandas.
Yep. In Madison, it's Rocket City, which is in the Huntsville area.
Yeah, it's in Alabama, and it looks beautiful. I think it's called, like Toyota Stadium, I think it's called.
It probably is. I can't think of it right now.
I know it's named after a car, but yeah, it's like Toyota or Honda Stadium, something like that.
So, Rick, why don't you go? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I was saying, for me, that like going down to Trash City Pandas was about a 6-hour drive for me, maybe a little bit more. But I have some friends down there, so when you make your baseball trips, you're like, okay, I'll go visit some friends, go see a baseball game, and just have to wait, because that looks like what I heard. What I heard with the Trash Pandas is that they made $1 million before they even played a game, just based on that logo and the identity.
When I heard of the name, and I'm just like, this is the most idiotic name. And someone said it's a slang term for like a raccoon.
Yes,
that's what they're called, Trash Pandas. And
they had
and I thought, Oh, okay.
Yeah. See, they had a list, and it was either they're going to be called Northern Alabama or Madison or Huntsville or Rocket City, and then you had to pick the name of the team. And all the names were goofy names,
Yeah.
But Trash Pandas, I'm like, that's just a typical minor league ball name for this time of year. So,
well, you can't get any more crazier than the Savannah Bananas.
Oh,
or the Making Bacon.
The Making Bacon, the Bananas. My goodness, those guys. And I know you know. No, did you tell me you knew Jesse?
I know Jesse Cole. Yes.
Okay. What that guy has done.
It's amazing. He's a great PR guy. He does these bizarre, promotionals. But, man, he did a great job with the Grizzlies. Now he's with Savannah Bananas now. Him and his wife, Emily, do a fantastic job in the Coastal Plain League here.
When I heard that name, I was like, what the heck? And then I saw the logo, and then I saw what they do at a game, and I was like, okay.
It was on ESPN. ESPN announced, he goes, okay, guys, you want to hear the goofiest name ever? We're going to give it to you in 5 seconds. And he went, here you go. And it said Savannah Bananas. And it's like, oh, man, are you serious?
Well,
I already knew about it because
I love that logo. That's an awesome logo. I mean, it's
a mean-looking banana. It's a mean-looking banana.
It's perfect. It's better than the Portland Pickle logo, and they do a pretty good job, too, out there as well.
So, Rick, you came up with a list of some stadiums that we'd like to hear what you got to say.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well,
and we can't forget about Rick's list, right?
Biased. I love now it's going to be called Truist Stadium, but in Charlotte, North Carolina, it's one of the best minor league fields I've ever been to. It's a great stadium. Fun. It's right by a park. There's bars right there. You don't even have to drive down there. It's in Uptown Charlotte. We call it Uptown. You can take a Lynx there or a little subway that we have. Get off, just walk down there. It's like two blocks from where the Panthers play. It's just so fun and convenient, and their attendance went from 3,000 in Fort Mill to over 9,000, it went from last to first in one season.
Right.
So it's a great stadium. Lou Pinella's been there. They've had a lot of celebrities go there. I met Dale Murphy there one time. Great guy. Loved him. He's everything who I thought he was. So I love BB&T Ballpark. Of course, Dodger Stadium. I grew up in Dodger Stadium. Loved Dodger Stadium. It was fun. It was great. I used to go all the time with my dad and my parents. I've been to Anaheim Stadium when it was called Anaheim Stadium. And that's when they were the California Angels, not the LA Angels of Anaheim, or they want to be called now. It's crazy. But that's a great stadium. It's fun. And that's where the Rams used to play, so it's a great multi-purpose stadium. Asheville's a great stadium. The tourists, if you ever go to the Smoky Mountains up there and all that, it's just a great place to see baseball. Whether it's professional or minor league, it's great.
Is it Smoky or Blue Ridge? I thought it was both, wasn't it?
Well, you can see the Smoky Mountains from there. It's up you go up in Asheville, go through Waynesville and all that. So you can actually see the Smoky Mountains. But it's a great place. I mean, it's baseball in the Carolinas is beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous.
Yeah, and I'm from the West Coast, so, I'm so used to, the same weather all the time. The weather here is so funky, but it's beautiful. If you're another one of my favorite college places is an Appalachian State in Boone. You talk about beautiful settings, gorgeous settings. That's one of the nicest stadiums, and it's all full of trees. You can go there during the fall, and it's yellow and red. It's spectacular place to see. Appalachian is a beautiful university. It's a great place to see baseball. Of course, one of the worst I went to was Cashman Field in Las Vegas when they were called the Area 51s. Now they're called the Aviators. They moved the stadium to Summerlin now, a great area, but Cashman Stadium was a complete dump. It was in a horrific area in Las Vegas, somewhere you don't want to be at night. I lived there 5 years. It was a really weird place. It was old, and it just wasn't a good place. Unfortunately, I didn't care for the one at Fort Mill, the Castle, where the Knights used to play. They desperately needed a new stadium. They were trying to get a new stadium, and some idiot blocked it for 7 years. So it wasn't the Knights' fault. It was some idiot that blocked it for 7 years. And it was just an old stadium. Nobody went there. Fort Mill's a very small city. Like 10, 11,000 people live there. It's like 25 minutes from Charlotte, so people are not going to drive to Fort Mill to go see a minor league baseball team. So unfortunately, their attendance was terrible, and when I went to a game, it was empty, and there was just no passion there. It was just everybody already knew that, yeah, we're probably not going to have, they're probably going to leave anyway, so why show up? So those are some of the stadiums I went to, and I think on my bucket list, I would love to go to Toronto. I remember when they built the Sky Dome, it was exhibition was horrific. It looked like a warehouse, and they just put like a home run fence there. And but the Sky Dome, it had I never heard of a hotel that had a stadium that had hotels. I had a retractable roof. It was really way ahead of its time. And I think probably my all-time, I hate the Metrodome. I hated that baggy. I'm glad Target Field's there. It's a beautiful stadium. I think my all-time probably hated stadium is probably in Montreal, Olympic Stadium. I hated that stadium. It was
I agree with you there.
It was quiet. Nobody went to the games.
Remember the seats?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was like weird looking. Nobody was at the game. It was quiet. It was all in French. I don't even think they understood baseball, and I remember instead of like, I'm like, okay, I wonder how far it is down the line. It's like in middle. I'm like, what is this measurement? So I don't get it. And I'm like a little kid watching the game, like, what? Oh, that's how they measure things in Canada, and that's it's French and everything, and they would do, every name was like, everything was in French, and I was just like, this is dumb, and nobody cared. I was amazed that Montreal had a team that long.
Yeah, Mark.
What was sad is that if you went to the late 70s, early 80s, people did care about baseball in Montreal. Unfortunately, I think by the time we went there, they were like still mad about the 1994 strike.
Oh, yeah.
That really was detrimental.
Yeah, Mark Littell did not give Montreal any glowing endorsement. Rick and I were on that broadcast, and Mark Littell went off on he won't win any popularity contest in Montreal. Then again, many years ago, I wouldn't either when they booed the national anthem, and I called them the Montreal morons. And I had a lot of death threats. That'll be for another broadcast. But
they're mean. I had a group in Montreal when I was starting the MLB Charlotte thing, and they would just hound me on social media and send me all these nasty messages and what I was doing was dumb. And I'm looking at them like, dude, you had one of the worst stadiums, and your team, I felt bad for you in '94, but guys didn't accomplish nothing there. And nobody ever went to the game, and now you want to bring a team back in Montreal when you had your opportunity to have a team there?
Yeah,
I don't get it.
I probably had more hits on the Detroit Sports Broadcasters Media website than anybody ever has in history. I'm not bragging about it because 98% of them were death threats. So, and when I wrote a second story, my editor said, "You sure you want to deal with this?" I did it, and it wasn't as bad as the first time, but they get a little upset up there, to say the least. And I'll tell you, Atlanta Fulton County Stadium was nothing to write home about. I think what blows me away is how Turner Field, thankfully they went ahead and remodeled it to accommodate Georgia State.
Yeah.
I hate to see stadiums that are relatively new get outdated relatively quick, because that to me is a waste. But thankfully Georgia State's football team plays at the old Turner Field. And, I hear the new one in the suburbs is really nice, but I understand why they had to do another one in Texas because of the humidity, and they needed an enclosed stadium out in Texas. So have
you seen pictures? Have you seen the interior of the new Texas ballpark?
I saw the exterior, but I haven't seen the interior.
I had a friend, a buddy that works for Stadium Journey, and he went out there. He was supposed to see a game. He made the plans, and then he just decided to go out there anyway and visit friends and take a tour. The inside of the stadium, nothing spectacular. You're looking at it. It doesn't stand out. You're not like, wow, look at that view, or, but I guess it has all the comforts anyone would need. It has all the luxuries and the great food. It probably has a lot of great amenities. But I was somewhat disappointed at what I was looking at. I was like,
It got criticized a lot. A lot of people were making fun of it, said it looked like a warehouse.
Yes, from the outside.
Well, I'll tell you. I'll show you the age card here. I remember years ago I saw the old Memorial Stadium in Baltimore and saw the Tigers there. Do you guys ever get to that one?
I was there. I went there for a not Montreal. I went there for a Baltimore Stallions football game.
Oh, did you?
They had a
Okay.
CFL team. They wind up moving to Montreal, but they had a CFL team.
Right, the Stallions.
And we showed up. The Stallions. In fact, when we went there, it must have been 1995, they were called the Colts. And they had to cross out the name Colts because they were trademarked upon the NFL. So they were called the Baltimore CFLers, technically. So they were called the Stallions the next year. So we show up there early to get tickets, and there's a couple players out there jumping their car because the battery died. And we wind up going to a game later on. Like 30,000 people were at this game. We're like, oh, wow, CFL football in Maryland. We just thought it was just wild.
Well, amazingly enough, I went to Camden Yards, but I saw the football stadium, but drove by the baseball stadium. Camden Yards, I'd love to get there and see one there. Again, we like to do a lot of things. You just have to do what we've done to sort it out. So with that said, we've talked a lot about ballparks, but we can't lose sight of the big thing here on the broadcast, okay? Mark, how do you do it? Do you fly? Do you drive? Or what?
I drive a lot, and that's probably why that's why my cars have a ton of miles on them. What I usually do is, and it's getting harder because there was a time where you could say, well, I'm going to go out to Iowa, see all these games. I'm going to go up to Michigan. I'm going to go up to Wisconsin. Now I have to start flying to some of these places to get to the ballparks, but I would say in the beginning I would drive. I would map out a schedule. I would get all the schedules of the teams within an area and see when there's a day game. Because if there's a day game, which I don't like day games because those are usually can't get days for the kids. And those, you just have a bunch of kids throwing water balloons at you. That's not my idea of fun. Or squirting you with a hose like in Charleston. I mean, I told the kids, I have a camera on me. Do not squirt me with water. So I went to Charleston, beautiful city, but the ballpark experience, unfortunately, wasn't that great. However, later on that day, later on the next day, I drove up to Myrtle Beach to see a game. So that's how you have to plan your trips. So that's how you can go on vacation. That's how you can go on a 7-day trip and see about 8 ball games. You just see where teams are playing, and hope if you can do 2 games in one day, that's great. Now, normally I do it by myself because there's not too many people that want to go to see all these games in such rapid succession. One thing I'm starting to do now as I get older is that just go to a city and spend some time there and get to know the city. When I went to Birmingham the first time, I was just there for overnight, and there was probably a lot I could have seen there. I went down to Montgomery, Alabama, and I was there for 2 nights. Well, there was really nothing going on in Montgomery. I didn't really particularly care for the town. When I went to Augusta, I was just there for overnight. Sometimes I have to tell myself, you're driving. Just go hang out here for a few days. Maybe go to a couple games at the ballpark and see how the nights compare to one another. So, most of the time it is driving. For example, last year I drove up to Green Bay, saw a game in Fond du Lac, saw a game in Milwaukee. I also saw a game in, where else did I go? Lakeshore, Chinooks, which is just north of town. So I did that whole Wisconsin circle around the lake. I think it's called Lake Winnebago. Great time up there, because all the ballparks were near each other. So, you got to really enjoy the towns that you were in. And, really like Green Bay during the summer. I mean, there was a lot to do in that small little town. It all revolved pretty much around the Green Bay Packers, but I was impressed.
Yeah,
what I was able to see there.
What we did last year was we went up to, or maybe 2 years ago, we went up to Midland to see an old friend of mine, and we it was during the off season, so we couldn't get in, but we went by the Dow ballpark where the Dodgers play up in Midland. The beautiful place. Back in the day when I was actually married to a girl from that area in Beaverton back then. And Midland was just a real small place, but what they've done to build that town up is unreal. they only had 3 hotels and all that.
Yeah, you're right.
Back in the day.
Do they have more hotels now?
Oh, you can't even compare it. But my wife and I, my wife and I went ahead and drove by it, and it was neat to see what they've done in Midland. Midland, Michigan is one of the nicest towns out there. It really is. It really is. If anybody can get to Dodger's place, if I ever get up there during the summer, I'll definitely go up there and definitely see that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I was there in 2010. My wife and I, we did Western Michigan, Midland, and you're right. There was 3 hotels there, and I did not think. I was like, what the heck? Why did they put a ballpark up here? Because even when you're driving up there, I don't even think they had an interstate at the time. You pretty much.
Well, I think it was 10, wasn't it? US 10, if I remember right.
It might have been, and I remember just being in the middle of nowhere, and I'm like, 3 hotels, and there's a minor league ballpark.
Well,
it just seems so
things
weird.
have changed.
So you're the second person who's told me that the place is.
Oh, it's unreal. What they've done in Midland, Michigan is one of the best cities in the state that doesn't get a lot of attention, I think. Okay. Yeah, and Traverse City's starting to, they'll be playing ball up there. I'll probably, you better have a good credit card bill by the time of some of the things I'm telling you to do. Curti,
Traverse,
yeah.
I can tell you, if I go to Lansing this year to see a game, I'm debating on going to Traverse City because that's a 3-hour drive.
Oh, it's a
the only
place.
problem is... it's a little over 3 hours to get to Lansing from where I am. But then you have to drive 3 more hours north. But I would love. That's a ballpark I've never been to.
Well, yeah, you should check it out. Traverse City. I used to go there. It's a very touristic area. I mean, Rick Curti's smarter than any of us. He's got some great baseball in the Carolinas, without a doubt. I mean, they really do. But if you go to some of these other joints, I
remember I wrote for a website years ago when there was a Ballpark Biz. I used to write for them from time to time, and I remember thinking, my God, how envious am I of not being in the Carolinas? I mean, you can just throw a baseball and hit a ballpark of any college, amateur, coastal plain league, minor league. It just it's an old, new, middle of the road. I mean, it was amazing. To see all these ballparks out there.
I mean, so you've driven to a lot of them. So your wife really must be passionate about what you're doing. How much does she like doing this with you?
She doesn't come on a lot of those trips. She comes every now and then. And sometimes she doesn't want to go to the ballpark. If we get a nice enough hotel, because she's a hotel snob,
right?
She'll just hang out at the hotel. She's like, good, have fun. She's not a baseball fan. She did come to last year. I was able to throw out the baseball in Western Michigan at the Whitecaps game. I had won their fan food vote contest, and they picked my entry, which was a fried Philly cheesesteak. So they gave us a suite, and I have some friends in the neighborhood. They came up, and she drank some wine, and she had a good time. If you can give her a little bit of wine or some slushies, alcoholic slushies. Like I tell you, she had a good time there. She had a good time in Round Rock with my cousin because they kept drinking alcoholic slushies, margaritas, I think they were. And we got to sit in the upper deck above right field, or above left field. She had a great time up there. So yeah, if you can get a little bit of alcohol. We went to Fort Wayne another time, and they had Saturday Night Live night, where the players dressed in Spartan cheerleader jerseys, and they kept playing Saturday Night Live music, and they kept doing trivia. She liked that as well, but she's not a baseball fan. So I do these trips by myself. If we go on vacation and I can sneak in a baseball game or two, she'll come out. But it's usually me solo, or there's a couple buddies I travel with. That will come on board with me.
Well, I got to tell you this. Obviously, Rick Curti has been talking about it for a while, and it's a matter of time before this one comes to fruition. The Milwaukee Milkmen are going to be, I think they're playing some games there, but now they've got a brand new park out in the suburbs of Milwaukee.
Franklin, yes.
Franklin, right. And now, did you alluded to the St. Paul Saints tonight. So, with that said, have you ever heard of a guy named Mike Veck?
Mike, Yeah, Mike Veck, Bill Veck's son, yes.
Right, yeah. I met Mike, and I knew him for a long time. And he's really big when it comes to minor league promotions. I actually met Bill years ago in South Florida, but I got to know Mike really well. He worked with Dave Dombrowski with the Tigers. So you want to talk about one of the more...
oh, my goodness. I'd love to talk to him. I mean, I read his father's book, The Hustler's Handbook, Beckes and Rec. I love some of those stories.
Yeah, I got to know
Bill
Mike.
Beck was doing way before it was the norm.
Yeah, we actually got in touch again on LinkedIn. I have to get back to him sometime, but unbelievable. My wife, I'll tell you, she's a dynamo. You know, I got to tell you, one of the funny stories that we had with her over at Miller Park was this poor girl here has taken pictures. She's in a photo well, and she couldn't see over it. So the PR guy and I we really felt bad for her because, you know, at 5'4", it's pretty hard for her to see. So she was kind of height handicapped. So Ken Spindler, the PR guy for the Milwaukee Brewers, and I got to laugh. So you know what Ken did? I'll credential her again tomorrow. And then Candy had an opportunity to go ahead and, take pictures from different angles. And some of the photos that my beloved takes are just off the charts. They really, really are. You know, you talk about a wife devoted to you and your passion. Mine is just, to me, she's A1. You know, the pictures she has, in fact, the first time she ever took pictures with me, I told her, you need to upgrade your camera. She goes over to Brandsmark, gets a great camera, and she ended up taking pictures of the Milwaukee Brewers and the Miami Marlins at Marlins Park. So it's amazing how, our ladies here are very, they endorse our passion, because anybody, whether you're at the Major League Park or minor league parks, you can appreciate baseball at every level. You know, whether it's the future stars playing or the current players, it doesn't matter. Baseball, to me, is baseball. So, Rick, anything you want to add to this? I know you're relatively subdued. You get your spots in. Go ahead, Mr. Curti.
Well, they're all great ballparks. I got a lot of bucket lists I want to go to. I'd love to see that new Milwaukee Milkman Stadium and see how it goes. And my bucket list, I was going to go to High Point and go see BB&T. Well, now it's called, they changed the name recently. I'll go see the Rockers. I was all excited about it. I met the president of the Rockers. I'm friends with him, social media, and I was ready to go to a game. And unfortunately, COVID-19 happened. It canceled the season. And so, there's a lot of places I want to go to and stuff like that. So we'll see what 20. I don't see myself going to any games this year, but definitely next year when we get back to some type of normalcy. I definitely want to go to a game. And if you haven't been to BB&T or in Charlotte, you got to go. It's a terrific stadium. It's been it's always up there with one of the best minor league stadiums out there. And it's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun to go to.
So, Mark, what do you want to add?
I definitely would like to add Texas, Miami, and Washington, because that would complete my list. I'm not in a terrible rush to do them, just because I know they'll be there for some time. But, eventually I'd like to say I've been to all 30 of them. I would love to hit some of these other minor league ballparks. Provo has a beautiful, Ogden. Well, Ogden and Provo both have nice ballparks. But the Ogden Raptors have one of the best views of minor league baseball. I would love to see a game out there. I would also like to check out some of these Appalachian ballparks that may or may not be here next year. Johnson City is on my list. I had the opportunity to go there a few years ago. Well, actually about 10 years ago now. And I was like, I don't think I want to go to Johnson City, but it looks like they put a lot of money into that ballpark, and unfortunately, they may not have a team next year. Vancouver, the Nat, would love to go to Vancouver to see a game. I hear great stuff about that place. I'd love to see a Portland Pickles game. They look like they do a lot of fun activities. Savannah Bananas. I've been to the ballpark. I just want to see a Savannah Bananas game with 4,000 people and all the wacky hijinks they do out there. Of course, Charlotte, that's on my bucket list of a place that I had scheduled for this year, along with Kannapolis, and High Point was also gonna. If I was able to drive up there, I would have seen a game. And watching Korean baseball, I'd love to go to a game in Korea. There's a guy who travels to some of the baseball stadiums and he makes videos, and the food and how you can sing and dance, and there's a DJ and an MC. It's just this different vibe out there for Korean baseball games. That's a little more exotic of a locale to go to, but they look like a lot of fun out there. It look like they really take baseball serious, as opposed to some of the stadiums in Australia and Holland, where you're like, not quite there for the baseball level that I'm expecting.
One of the most bizarre experiences that I've ever had, especially with a new park at the time, was Osceola County Stadium. I was covering the Florida State League All-Star Game, brand new ballpark, and the phone lines weren't working. I tried to send my story over one of those, you know how you have one of those computers where you have to stick the what do you call it, the headset into it. I tried to send it 5 times, couldn't do it. I had to dictate 2 stories and get an extension for my deadline. And when you're going to college like I am, and every story counts towards your paycheck, it's unreal. Well, I took my wife to that very stadium when the Astros were there before they moved down to West Palm Beach, and it's safe to say that the internet was working fine, and I was joking around with some of my good friends. One of them was Lynn Henning, former Detroit Tigers beat writer or columnist, and we joked around about that. It was just unbelievable. So, amazingly enough, I guess when I compare you, Mark, and myself, you being the casual fan and me being the sports writer, it's a different animal. But no matter what it is, I'm always intrigued by the way the minor league people go ahead and market their teams the way they do, have all the gimmicky things. And I still think that if you're a baseball fan, you're a baseball fan or a baseball junkie. And, there are a lot of parks that are going to fall by the wayside because of contraction, mainly because a lot of them weren't up to regular standards. And now the way the baseball draft is being turned upside down, and yet it's so amazing how many places, ballparks, are in such beautiful areas. And now, Rick, you talked about Boone, North Carolina. Mm-hmm. I actually went up there and visited that area. A friend of mine her mom and dad had a place, and I stayed up there with them, and I checked out Appalachian State, and that is gorgeous country up there. It really is. Yeah, I think by the Glowing beautiful. Rocks, isn't it? Blowing Rocks is up there. It's just gorgeous up there. Anybody that doesn't go to Boone, North Carolina, shame on you, because it is absolutely gorgeous for sure.
Boone, so you're saying Appalachian, their baseball stadium is gorgeous.
Well, I've never been to the baseball stadium. I was actually
campus and where they play it. It's gorgeous. You just go up there and it's just mountains and trees everywhere. It's just beautiful.
I didn't see the baseball stadium.
I would never even think about doing something like that, so that's why it's good to hear these stories.
Yeah, I didn't see the baseball stadium, but I drove by the football stadium, probably for all the wrong reasons. So when Appalachian State beat Michigan in the biggest upset of all time, and I'm thinking to myself, that was painful, but the scenery was not painful, that's for sure. So, I know we could do hours and hours on this. I know that we touched by a lot of interesting parks that we may or may not have, but I think we got off to a pretty good start. So, and what's nice about Dodger Town and Vero Beach is they're still using it for youth baseball. I've actually hit all the Cactus League parks, and I hit a lot of the old ones too, the ones that are no longer in use. I don't know what I did on the Tucson side because I spent most of my time up in the Phoenix area and did Yuma, and I took my wife by Phoenix Municipal Stadium, which, by the way, is being used by Arizona State. And so at least I know that's a former Major League Park where, those college guys are certainly being evaluated pretty objectively. So, I tend to be partial towards the ones that I've worked in, especially back in the day with minor league. So any closing thoughts at all, Mark?
I just want to go to a baseball game. I would just take the dumpiest ballpark right now just to sit down, watch a game, have a hot dog, and a beer. This year has really taught me, how much baseball means to me, and during the summer, and how it affects me when I travel. Every place I travel is due to a baseball stadium. I don't think I go anywhere if there's not a ballpark during the season. But this is going to be a year I hope no one gets to experience ever again, because it's odd.
Yeah, well, with that said, Mark, why don't you go ahead and let everybody know how they get a hold of you, and then Rick and I will wrap it up. Go ahead. And I know your YouTube channel is definitely getting a workout, and I know we'll definitely be paying more attention to it as you will mine, especially as I rack up the videos once COVID-19 decides to see you later.
Well, okay, perfect. You can follow me on stadiumjourney.com. You can find us on Facebook. Give us a like. I do a lot of baseball stories on there. You can follow me on Twitter at Ballpark Hunter, Instagram as well, Ballpark Hunter. And make sure you check out one of my ballpark videos on my YouTube channel, which is also Ballpark Hunter. Hit that subscription button and give me a like or a comment. I write back, and I love taking feedback. How can I do things better, and what ballparks can I go to next?
You ever been to Pensacola at all? See the Blue Wahoos?
I have never been to Pensacola. That's one of the few places in the U.S. I have not visited. But
yeah, we drove by there.
It's a beautiful ballpark. There's an article on the website right now. It's listed as one of the top views in baseball. So yeah, I definitely would love to go see a game there.
They've got an Airbnb there. If you could come up with $1,500 a night, then you can.
Is that how much they're charging?
Yeah, $1,500 for up to 10 people. Yeah, we drove by there in Pensacola, went around the beaches. Haven't been to the ballpark yet, but with Quinn Studer and I were eventually going to get together. He told me anytime I want to do some work behind a microphone, I can do it there or in Beloit, but it'll be a ways before any of that happens. So you might want to stick that on your bucket list as well. I think the man actually probably owns the region. All right, Rick Curti, go ahead and let people know how they get a hold of you.
You can contact us on our website at Charlotte Bats, www.charlottebats.com. I'm also on LinkedIn under Rick Curti. You can find me on Facebook at Charlotte MLB. It's our group page. We also have another page called Charlotte Bats Baseball. And we're also on Instagram at Charlotte Bats, and I'm also on Twitter at Charlotte Bats Baseball, and you can contact us on there, and you can go on our website and sign our petition to bring Major League Baseball to Charlotte.
All right, and last but not least, me. All right, well, as I found out with Mr. Ballpark Hunter, he knows me all too well, right? Right, Mark? He knows me well. At Tribune South is my Twitter, and then also on Facebook, you can find me at South Florida Tribune, like that page. Instagram, South Florida Tribune gets it done. Yes, like Mark. Okay, I have a YouTube channel that is South Florida Tribune. Our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. Our email address is southfloridatribune@gmail.com. You can connect with me on LinkedIn under Scott Morganroth. You are listening to 108 Stitches Baseball Talk here on the WSAN Network, and you can also find this broadcast on southfloridatribune.com or wherever you can get your podcast. So on behalf of Mark Biquez and Rick Curti, this is Scott Morganroth of Motor City Madmouth, hoping that you enjoyed this broadcast, and if you like it, go out there and share it and listen to it, and we hope everybody is out there and be safe, because COVID-19 has all of us turned upside down. It's certainly cramped Mark's style, my style, Rick's style, all the potential ballparks, but I think we had a pretty good list to get it going. So once again, folks, thanks very much for joining us, and we'll catch you the next time. Good night, everybody.